Okay, this is going to be a quick video on graphing polynomials with the aid of calculator. We graph these using the calculator. So I've already written out some of the notes that I want you to see. What we're going to do, the guidelines we're going to follow. So in graphing a polynomial, we're going to make a table, and we're going to put numbers in our table. We're going to use the calculator to help us graph this. So we're going to graph it on the calculator first. From the calculator, we're going to find the relative extrema, and we'll use the technique I showed you in a previous video for finding an extrema. So if you need to see that, make sure you watch that. We're going to look for the y-intercept. We're going to put that in there. And then we're going to put the extrema and the y-intercept into our table. And we're going to leave a space, at least one space between them. Then we're going to use the trace feature on the calculator to find those missing points in between. Keep in mind that we might need to do more points, so it just depends on the nature of our graph. We're going to draw a smooth curve through our points. And then the end product is we want to make sure we label our extremas and the y-intercept and any x-intercept that is an integer. If it's a fraction in between or something like that, you don't necessarily need to label those. I'm not too concerned about those at this point for the graphing aspect. But if it does land on an integer, it'd be nice for us to know that right off the get. So here's an example we're going to do. I've already graphed it to save us some time on the calculator. I repositioned my window so that we can see the pieces. So I did a window from -10 to 10, and up here I went from -25 to 25 to see this graph. And this is the graph that I drew right here. So you can see that we're going to have two relative minimums and one relative maximum, and then we have the y-intercepts. We want to find these 3 points. We'll use our calculator to do so real quickly. Menu, analyze the graph, and we'll find a minimum. We'll do this real quickly here to get those points up in there. So there's one. There's the other one. And there's the third. And we can move these around so we can actually see them. When we identify these and we write them on our paper to identify them, we want to make sure we go to at least 3 decimal places. But when we label them on the graph art that we're drawing, we want to do at least 3 decimal places. In the table, I'm just going to do a real brief abbreviation, so maybe like I'll only do like 2 decimal places or 1 or something like that. So in our table, we graphed it. We found the relative extrema. The y-intercept is always the constant, because if you plug in 0 for x, you'll get the constant, 15. And so when we see this, we want to have vacant points in our table on all sides of these numbers that we have here. So I want a number outside of this, a number in between, a number over here, a number over here. Okay, we might need to do a couple of numbers over here just to pin. And usually what I do is just do the integers in between them, if there is one. If not, I might have to do a half a point, something like that. These are pretty close up in here, so I don't need too much in between those. So I need a break here, and then we're going to put in the first minimum, which is a negative 1.67. And then this was 13.8. And then a break, and then we have the 0.53, and that was 17.1. And then that point and that point, the y-intercept is pretty close, so we're just going to put in x is 0, y is 15. We can plug it in the number 1. We'll do that later. The next one, leave a space. Do this one over here is 2.2 and a negative 17.9. And then we want to have at least 1 or 2 points on the end over here. So that's what I mean by putting in the extremas in the y-intercepts into the table first. If there was a bigger gap between these two, I'd actually put a bigger gap in there, but it's really close, and so I'm not going to. So now I'm going to pick numbers in between these. So I want at least one number out here on this end. So any number out here is fine. We can do -2. In between here, we'll put -1. We'll put 1 here. We'll put 3 and possibly 4. And then once I've chosen those values, I go to my calculator, menu, and trace is number 5. You're going to trace the graph. And then what happens is down here at the bottom, you want to make sure you can see it. I have something in the way. Let me exit out of this so I can get rid of this. I have to move that point out of the way. Trace the graph. Down here at the bottom, you'll see the point that it's tracing. And up here, you'll see a big X. That's where it's at. And right now, it's currently at the y-intercept, and we can see that it's 15. If I type in -2, then the little X value moves around, and it gives me the value of the point right there. At -2, we're at 15. Just type for the next point, just type the next point because I'm still in trace mode. And it'll give me this one is at 16. And if I type in 1, no, I get a 0. So that's one we're going to label. 3 is 0. That's another one I'm going to label. And then 4. Oops. And that, you can see it moved way up there to a negative to 111. So I'm not graphing that one. That's too far outside my scale. But once I have my table, then I can go back and try and draw this picture. And let's see if I can go back to it. And so we're going to draw that picture based off of that onto our graph paper. So here's my graph paper for it. We're going to put in our numbers. It's hard to see the table at the same time, but I'll just read them off to you. So the first point we had was a -2, 15. So -2, 15. And just get as close as you can get to it. And then we had our relative minimum at a -1.6 and 13.8, which is about right there. -1 was 16. 0 was 15. And we had a relative max right in about in the middle, right there. 1 went to 0. We didn't do 2, but 2.2 was at a -17, so we're down here closer, almost 18. It's way down there. Then back up to 3, we had to go all the way back up to 0. And remember, 4 was at 111, which is way off the scale that I have. So based off the picture we had, and I got kind of moved around, this is getting steep really quickly over here and getting steep really quickly over here. So when I draw this part right here, keep that in mind. Try and go through your dots. Usually what I do when I graph is I aim for just to the side of it so that I can then turn and come back up. So I know I'm coming in very steep on this side. I'm going to turn on that piece, aiming for that dot right there, turn it up there. I got to go all the way through this dot down to here in a very short amount of time. So it's very, very steep. Just aim for this point way down here. Aim for just to the side of it. Come all the way around it. Come back up to that point right there. And then just keep it going straight up, heading to 111. Put arrows on the end. That's what the picture looked like. And then you label the points that we wanted. So this was a negative. Look at it over here. We had a negative 1.675 and 13.827. This was 0, 15. This point right here is a negative 0.539 and 17.072. And this point down here was 2.214 and negative 17.898, so 0.899. And then because these are two integers, it'd be nice to just label them. That's 30 and that's 10. So that's what I'm looking for when you draw a graph, and the proper labeling that I'll be looking for. And we'll conclude on that point right there.